Rhino have been a totem in Africa since time immemorial. But now this iconic species is under threat of extinction if the current rate of poaching cannot be halted. It was conservationist Anton Rupert who said, "Conservation without money is conversation." It was these words that inspired four friends to develop a strategy to raise funds for rhino conservation in a donor-fatigued market. Mint owners Noel Duncan and Matiki Chikala, veteran wildlife filmmaker Philip Hatting, and extreme adventurer and conservationist Bram Malherbe formed the African Heritage Ambassadors. Bram had faced some extreme challenges in his efforts to raise funds and awareness for humanitarian as well as environmental conservation organizations. But when wildlife politics comes head-to-head with wildlife conservation, the stakes inevitably move up again.
We've all faced many challenges. Probably one of the greatest ever is to conserve the biodiversity of our planet.
Africa's indigenous peoples practiced the wise economic law of only harvesting from nature what was needed to survive. The colonialists, however, saw Africa's resources as a limitless bounty. Soon the unthinkable became a reality, as species after species was condemned to the extinction list. The rhino population in southern Africa managed to survive in small isolated pockets. By the mid-1960s, newly developed tranquilizing drugs allowed conservationists to capture and relocate the now severely threatened rhino population in South Africa to game reserves and zoos outside the country where they could be protected. In an attempt to contain the ongoing slaughter, neighboring countries introduced a shoot-to-kill policy against poachers, and rhino were moved to so-called IPZs, intensive protection zones, where they were guarded 24/7. But the slaughter continued, and in 1976, the international conservation body CITES swayed members to vote in favor of a ban that prohibited the trade of rhino products. 3.5 decades later, over 65,000 rhino have been poached, the species permanently removed from their traditional home ranges in Africa. Clearly the trade ban had failed. Active wildlife management in South Africa meant rhino had been spared the carnage. The new millennium witnessed almost 90% of the continent's rhino population surviving there. Organized crime reacted swiftly when the demand for rhino horns spiked in Asian countries. Conservation authorities were caught off guard when organized crime turned to South Africa to meet the market. 7 rhino were poached in 2000, and then the numbers increased exponentially. By 2011, the figure was 448. Predictions for 2012 is that almost 600 will be poached. A low-intensity war against rhino poachers is being waged in national as well as private wildlife reserves. The tipping point for the species' survival looms ever closer. Western science is quick to point out that rhino horn is no more than keratin, a substance much like fingernails or horses' hooves, and contains no medicinal properties.
All the research that has been done, analytical stuff on these horns, have proved that they're absolutely no medicinal value.
The strong cultural belief in traditional remedies, even if it originates from endangered wildlife species, is perpetuated amongst the youth. The use of rhino horn in traditional Chinese medicine is as old as the Great Wall itself. In Vietnam, rhino horn is consumed as a recreational drug, even as a cure for hangovers. More expensive than cocaine, heroin, or gold per gram, the use of rhino horn has become a status symbol amongst the nouveau riche. This, along with the rumor that it can be used as a cure for cancer, attracted organized crime syndicates to the illegal market. It's estimated that the income from the illegal rhino horn trade is worth close to $100 million to crime syndicates annually, money that could be used by conservation authorities if the trade was to be legalized.
We have the knowledge and the expertise to stop the onslaught on our rhino. It's time to stop talking about what we should be doing, but rather what we can do to stop the rhino wars.
The South African government initiated talks with stakeholders to develop an anti-poaching strategy. Private rhino owners followed suit.
Statements listen to the will of the people. We as the asset owners are saying state CITES has not worked. It has failed miserably. We now need a plan B to ensure the survival of the animal.
But 3 years later, the talks about the talks have only yielded limited positive results. By mid-2012, one rhino was being poached every 15 hours. Private rhino owners have become skeptical about keeping rhino. Securing their safety is costly, and there is very little financial reward, as trade in the products is not permitted.
We sit in a situation where we have huge stockpiles of rhino horn. These are from animals that have died of natural mortality. There should be a legalized method of selling rhino horn, exactly the same as you have in any other commodity. The analogy here is the moment a product is banned, as it currently is under the CITES legislation, you may not legally sell any component or part of a rhino, which now has created a black market, and we are suffering the consequences.
Current legislation is that if I want to transfer ownership of a rhino horn from me to you, we have to kill the animal in a trophy hunt. Whether it's a pseudo-trophy hunt or not, that's the only way we can get ownership across to you.
That's absolutely ridiculous. It's like killing the goose that lays the golden egg.
Exactly. But not only one golden egg, because a rhino's horn can be cut 10 or 15 times during its life.
The majority of rhino poaching incidents in South Africa take place in the Kruger National Park. Not surprising, since it's also home to the vast majority of the country's rhino and shares a porous 400-kilometer eastern border with Mozambique. The Kruger Park is also home to a ranger training program whose philosophy it is to take the fight to the rhino poachers.
The philosophy now is to take the fight to the poachers, not to be reactive, but rather to find the poacher before he kills the animal.
After an exacting selection process, new recruits are put through an intensive 6-week training course before being deployed. Existing rangers need to be retrained regularly, and exercises based on real-life scenarios conducted. The latest addition to the anti-poaching arsenal are sniffer dogs. They're used to track poachers in the field and also detect wildlife contraband at South Africa's entry and exit points.
You shoot rhino. Yeah.
In an attempt to dissuade poachers, the criminal justice system has elevated rhino poaching to that of a serious crime. The penalty includes asset forfeiture. But the risk-reward profile still attracts criminals from every level.
No bail for such brutal killers.
The arrest versus conviction rate is not encouraging, nor is the number of horns recovered in relation to rhino poached. Only 7% of the horns from rhino poached are recovered. New legislation requires that every time a rhino is tranquilized, the horn is microchipped and a DNA sample taken for analysis and storage at the University of Pretoria's Veterinary Genetics Laboratory. DNA samples allow the crime scene to be linked to the criminals.
Our first conviction was a Vietnamese gentleman who tried to traffic horns through Oliver Tambo Airport, and those horns were matched to an actual poached animal, and the person got 10 years sentence as a result of that connection.
Private rhino owners have also tried to mitigate poaching by infusing horn with an ectoparasiticide, which makes it unusable for human consumption whilst warding off parasites from the animal. One of the most pressing issues is the rehabilitation of orphaned rhino calves.
Each and every calf has an important conservation role to play and in the future generations of rhino. And each calf needs to be reared properly with the specialized techniques and reared in such a way that it can be rehabilitated, put back into the wild and breed, and thus contribute to rhino conservation.
The African Heritage Ambassadors have chosen to remain outside of existing anti-poaching fundraisers and distributors with their Rhino Ambassador set. Donor fatigue, along with several dubious Save the Rhino fund collectors, meant that any game changers in the fight against rhino poaching would have to develop a unique concept to raise and distribute funds. Instant gratification in the form of an appreciating asset means that besides being able to pay it forward, you have purchased a unique piece of conservation history. African Heritage Ambassadors will conduct a needs analysis from funding applications received and are in a position to react swiftly to provide funding in emergency situations. The minting and manufacturing company, Global Gold's track record in quality craftsmanship and outstanding design made them an easy choice for creating the Rhino Ambassador range along with the dies. The handmade African rosewood boxes are also manufactured by Global Gold. After testing the integrity of the dies, minting commenced. And in a world first, Rand Refinery stamped their hallmark, Rand Pure, on the gold medallion in the set. The green gold, or conflict-free gold hallmark, carries a special significance for conservation of the environment and value to the Rhino Ambassador collection.
Rand Refinery is delighted to be part of the initiative to stop the rhino poaching war. Rand Refinery is launching a new product marketed under the Rand Pure brand. We are delighted that we are able to now source gold from known sources, conflict-free regions of Africa, our home territory, bring that gold through our logistics into our processes in the refinery and deliver product that is made out of Rand Pure. And we believe this is an ideal product to go with the Save the Rhino initiative.
The authenticity of your pure gold medallion can be verified by visiting the Rand Refinery website and entering your certificate number. As a Rhino Ambassador, you have the option of including your name and photograph on the African Heritage Ambassador website, where regular video newsletters will let you experience firsthand how donations are being applied to rhino conservation.
Since time immemorial, investment in precious metals has provided a secure return. Thank you for investing in the conservation of Africa's rhino population and securing their future.
Our objective is to support the green economy becoming self-sustainable, and we can only achieve that if we conserve biodiversity.